What's going on, basketball fans? Welcome back to another episode of the NBA Talk Podcast for the week of December the 26th, 2016 to January 1st, 2017. I'm your host, Hani, and in this episode of the podcast, our main story for this week is the Atlanta Hawks have begun listening to trade offers for Millsap and other players. We also are going to be talking about how Bulls coach Hoiberg is actually on the hot seat. We're also going to be talking about how Rondo, and he will demand a trade if the Bulls don't play him. We're also going to be talking about, continuing a discussion from last episode where we talked about George Karl and how he's currently surprised by the backlash he received off of his new book and the comments he made within it. We're also going to be talking about the Timberwolves and how they're going to seek for medical retirement for Pekovic after January 31st. We're also going to get into the trade rumors of Brandon Knight and how, according to many sources, they believe that Brandon Knight is likely to be traded by the deadline. And we're also going to be continuing the Donatas Motiejunas saga, talking about how he signed a new deal with a new team and how he's, how he was completely stupid. We're going to get into that. And finally, we're going to be talking about the trade rumors surrounding Costa Koufos and the team that's really interested in trading for him. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So the Atlanta Hawks have begun listening to offers for Millsap and others. This is a big one. This is according to the score. So Paul Millsap could soon find himself out of Atlanta, with Millsap apparently set to opt out of his contract at the conclusion of the season. The Hawks have started listening to trade offers for the 31-year-old. Sources tell ESPN's Brian Windhorst and Mark Stein. However, sources tell Chris Vivlamore of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that Millsap hasn't made a decision about opting out yet, and the Hawks have yet to open trade discussions. So the Hawks are not openly shopping Millsap, but are taking calls on him, along with fellow soon-to-be free agents Kyle Korver and Thabo Sefolosha. After losing longtime big man Al Horford for nothing last offseason, the Hawks are reportedly intent on getting some sort of return for the 10-year veteran. Rival teams have told ESPN that the Hawks' asking price for Millsap is too high, making a trade unlikely. The 6'8" forward has been stellar for the Hawks this season, averaging 17.4 points per game, 8 rebounds and 3.7 assists, 1.6 steals and 0.9 blocks on 44.2% shooting. The Toronto Raptors and Denver Nuggets have reportedly expressed interest in Millsap in the past. Millsap has a player option for $21 million next season that he will opt out of this summer, league sources tell ESPN's Chris Haynes. So this is a huge story for this week because Millsap is arguably one of the NBA's most underrated two-way players in the league right now. He's probably one of the best. He's a consistent scorer. He's currently averaging 17. He can stretch the floor. He can shoot threes. That's very needed in today's NBA. He's also a distributor. He's averaging 3.4 assists a game. And finally, his best asset is the fact that he can create his own shot, which is hard for most big men to do because they don't really create their own shots. They like to have the guards create shots for them and create opportunities. But Millsap is that player who can create his own opportunities. So he is a huge asset for any team. So any team that can get their hands on Millsap will legit immediately improve their team. So basically, according to this report, Atlanta's now finally you know what? We don't know what's going to happen with this guy in the offseason. He's probably going to opt out. We want to get our money's worth for him. But we don't want to necessarily trade him away right now. We're going to take calls right now. So he's not available right now. We're going to answer phone calls and we're going to say, you know what? See what everybody's saying. See what we're going to be given. If we hear a good offer that we like, maybe we might go through with it. So that's the Atlanta situation right now. But in my opinion, I would say if I were the Hawks, I would try to trade Millsap now. I would try to trade this guy now because you don't want what happened to Al Horford to happen with Millsap. You don't want to lose probably one of your best players for nothing, and that's something Atlanta doesn't want to go through. So it's either now or never. And this guy's 32 years old. So he's old now. And I think Atlanta's finally realizing that, you know what, we need to move on and we want to build around a younger core. So, we got to stop sort of with these aged veterans and get rid of those guys and bring in some younger talent that can help build the future of this franchise. And the Hawks need to salvage his value right now. There's no other time but now to salvage what Millsap is. Because Millsap has a lot of value right now. And if you wait any longer, you may or may not receive a good trade offer for him. So there's that. So again, like the article stated, the two teams that are interested in Millsap are the Toronto Raptors and Denver Nuggets. As far as the best fit for Paul, I think the best option in general for Paul Millsap is to go to the Toronto Raptors. I think it's a good option for Paul because he'll be first of all on a contending team. He'll be in a good organization, a strong team, the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. But he'll also be joining a system where he fits right in. It fits his game. He's a two-way player. He plays great defensively. He's good offensively, and he's exactly who the Raptors need in a power forward. It's the one position they lack. So he would fit right in for that. So he's a good fit. And I think that's the best place for Millsap to go to. Now again, this all depends on how much the Hawks would want for Millsap. This is another thing that was mentioned in the article saying that, the Hawks asking price is really high. Because you remember last year, a similar thing was happening with Horford, where the Hawks were taking calls on Millsap, weren't sure if they're going to keep him. The Raptors or another team were interested, but except the Atlanta's asking price was so high that every team just said, you know what, screw it. We're not going to pay that much to get Horford for potentially a rental. Still sick, man. I hate getting sick. But, so that they don't want to do that for Millsap either. So the asking price might be too high to get him. But hypothetically, if I were to make a deal for Millsap to the Raptors, because I think that's probably the best place for Millsap to go to, I think the deal would have to involve Terrence Ross, Jared Sullinger, DeLon Wright. I think that's the best deal for those three for Millsap. I think that's a good deal. Maybe a couple of picks shift. That's really up to Masai Ujiri and the other GM, the Hawks GM. But I think that's a good deal because you're giving the Hawks 2 quality young players in DeLon and Terrence. Because these are 2 young guys who can help you can build a franchise with. They're good quality pieces. Terrence Ross is having sort of a resurgence here. DeLon Wright's a quality young point guard who hasn't seen a lot of minutes and needs that sort of spotlight. So I think that's going to be a great fit for Atlanta. And Jared Sullinger is a great veteran presence as well for the locker room. And then Toronto will get the asset of Millsap. So I think I think that's a great deal. But again, it all depends on how much the Hawks want for Millsap. Because if they want too much, let's say if they want a lot of draft picks, future draft picks, a lot of younger assets, then Toronto is probably not the team to trade with. You should maybe look to a team like Boston who have a lot of assets, or maybe a team like, I don't know, Philadelphia. I don't know, a team that has a lot of young assets who you can potentially make a great deal for. And one idea that just popped into my head actually right now while I was saying all this was Utah. What if Utah gets Millsap back? It's possible, but unlikely. But overall, I think this is big news. I think the fact that Atlanta is even considering trading Millsap is really big, especially for a team like Toronto who have been eyeing Millsap for so long that, this may be their chance to strike right now while the iron's hot. But overall, this is huge news, and I personally just think that it will be in the Hawks' best interest to trade Millsap now and salvage his value before he walks away for nothing. But it will be very interesting to see how this all plays out and how this will sort of affect the future of the Hawks franchise. Because there's also a couple other players as well. So, so the fact that the Hawks are listening to offer, that's a good thing for any other teams interested, because Millsap is a big name player and he might end up being moved. We don't know. It's a big possibility that Millsap could be traded by the trade deadline, which is in February. It's very interesting. So, but overall, I think Millsap should be traded. Probably Toronto's the best fit, but we'll see about this within the next couple of months. So Bulls coach Fred Hoiberg on the hot seat. The Chicago Bulls failed to qualify for the playoffs for the first time since 2008 last season and are now mired in mediocrity once again. With a 16-17 record following Friday's 10-point road loss to the Indiana Pacers, the scapegoat here may turn out to be second-year head coach Fred Hoiberg, who is reportedly on the hot seat due to his team's tepid play, according to ESPN's Mark Stein. The higher-ups in the organization reportedly believe that he doesn't have a firm grasp of his veteran-heavy roster, and that the players aren't responding to him as well as they have hoped to when they snagged him away from his gig at Iowa State in 2015. What could save his job, though, is management reported reluctance to pay Hoiberg a significant chunk of the guaranteed money he's owed on his 5-year contract worth nearly $25 million. With the loss to Indiana, Chicago is now 6-10 in the month of December, bolstering the 29th worst offense of 101.2 points per 100 possessions during that span. The ultimate low point came on December 13 when the Bulls owned a 21-point lead against former coach Tom Thibodeau and the Minnesota Timberwolves, but wound up losing by 5 on their home floor. The last time all coaches in the association went an entire season without getting fired was the 1970-71 season, where there were just 17 teams, according to ESPN stats and information. Well, first of all, let's talk about the Bulls currently. The Bulls are currently dead last in offensive efficiency. They're 29th in field goal percentage, last in three-point attempts, makes, and percentages. So these numbers alone just prove that the Bulls' problems aren't a coaching issue. This stuff a coach can't fix. You can't fix how bad a team is shooting. A coach can't do that while they're on the sidelines and coaching the team. You know, this isn't a coaching problem. This is a personnel problem. This is a problem with who the Bulls have on their team. You know, Fred Hoiberg doesn't have the correct pieces to run a proper modern-day NBA offense. And it stems from their lack of three-point shooting. Their three main guys, Rondo, Wade, and Butler, can't shoot threes. None of them can. You know, for instance, Jimmy Butler is a 33% three-point shooter. Wade, a 31%. Rondo, a 32%. This is all this season. So this provides just so the fact that your three top guys, your point guard, shooting guard, and small forward can't shoot. Pair that with your center, Robin Lopez, he can't shoot either. And then Mirotic, who can shoot. Your spacing is so congested. The Bulls' offensive spacing is so congested that you can't do anything. The Bulls can't score because teams are easily able to trap them because they know that they don't have to play them on the three-point line because they're not going to shoot. And even if they do shoot, they're going to miss. So it's not a problem. So teams, they can trap them in the paint in the middle where they know the Bulls are going to try to get into. So teams already know what the Bulls are trying to do. So, you know, looking at this, you know, it just proves that this is not Fred Hoiberg's fault. None of what the Bulls struggles right now are Fred Hoiberg's fault. And it's absolutely mind-boggling to see why everybody's blaming this on Fred Hoiberg. You know, but I did actually a little bit of research on this. I did a little bit of research on Fred Hoiberg, and I looked at his coaching style. And what I noticed from his coaching days at Iowa, what he likes to run a lot of kickouts and open three-point shots. He loves to run kickouts. He loves to, you know, get open three-point shots. But the problem is he can't run the offense as I mentioned. All 5 of his starting 5 can't shoot. So, you know, the coach can't run the offense he wants to run. So if the coach can't run the system that he wants to run with the players he has, this isn't the coach's fault. It's not his fault that he has, you know, a lack of personnel to run the type of offense that he wants to run. So, in my opinion, I think the solution to the Bulls' problems isn't to fire coach is not to fire Coach Hoiberg. In fact, is to make some trades and to try to get the personnel whom the Bulls or whom Coach Hoiberg can utilize in his offense. Floor spacers is what exactly I'm trying to get to. The Bulls need floor spacers. They need 3-point shooting. They need, guys who can come in and, stretch the floor. Because right now it's so congested with Wade, Butler, and Rondo. It's just too congested with all three of them on the floor together. And it's mind-boggling to think that people are saying that Fred Hoiberg is on the hot seat when it's not even his fault. But there is another issue to this, and it involves a coach not having the respect of his locker room. Now that's another completely different situation entirely, because when a coach doesn't have the respect of his players, if players don't respect your coach, then obviously it's a very bad situation. It's hard for coaches to recover from that. That's why if that's the case, then it's really difficult to gain respect back. So in that situation, then maybe firing Coach Hoiberg might become an option. But I don't think that's the case. I don't think the Bulls' problem is that they don't respect Coach Hoiberg. I think the problem is that Coach Hoiberg can't run the offense that he wants to run with the players that he has on his team. And that's a problem. Because Coach Hoiberg, he's a really good coach. He runs some great offensive sets. And he runs a nice up-tempo, modern NBA style, which he was supposed to bring to the Bulls. But now Bulls management did not bring in the players who would allow Fred Hoiberg to run such an offense that he ran at Iowa State. So that's the problem right here. I don't think he should be fired. That's the whole thing. This is complete bullshit. I don't think he should be on the hot seat just because the Bulls are on a losing streak. Guard Foreman and the rest of Bulls management should be looking at the roster and talking with Coach Hoiberg and looking, okay, the trade deadline's coming up. Who do you want on this team to run your offense? That's what they should be discussing with Coach Hoiberg. Because then, when a coach can get players who that fits his way of playing offense, it helps the coach. And the team plays better because the coach is able to run a proper offense, the one that he wants to run, without being stuck and being put in the situation where he can't do anything and the team struggles. So overall, in my opinion, I think Coach Hoiberg should not be fired. I think, this report is just complete bullshit that he's on the hot seat. Because remember, we just got out of December. There's still January, February, March, and then a little bit of April. You have around 3.25 months to make a playoff berth. There's still plenty of time. The Bulls just need to figure out, okay, what Coach Hoiberg has this style of play. The Bulls management will say, okay, let's get the players who Coach Hoiberg can actually utilize in his offense and be able to run the system that he wants to run. That's the situation here. It's not about, Coach Hoiberg isn't running the offense right. No, it's about he doesn't have the players to do it. He doesn't have players to help him. Just looking at these numbers just prove it all. But overall, we'll see about what happens, man. But if Coach Hoiberg gets fired, I will truly believe that it's an injustice to Coach Hoiberg because he had literally no control over that. But that's just in my opinion. So speaking of the Chicago Bulls, according to Rajon Rondo, he says he will absolutely ask for a trade if the Bulls don't play him. So Rajon Rondo may be headed to his 5th team in 3 seasons. The point guard hasn't seen the floor at all over the Chicago Bulls' last 6 quarters, and if the trend continues, he could force his way out. He told reporters this weekend he'd absolutely request a trade if Coach Fred Hoiberg continues to keep him out of the rotation, according to Casey Johnson of the Chicago Tribune. In Saturday's 116-96 loss to the Milwaukee Bucks, Hoiberg opted to start Michael Carter-Williams at the 1 spot and had Jerian Grant running the point off the bench, while Rondo received the DMP CD after drawing starts in all 29 of his prior contests. The 30-year-old informed general manager Gar Forman and executive vice president John Paxson of his desire to play in the Windy City or elsewhere when they met following the game to discuss his future with the team. However, Johnson's sources indicated the Bulls aren't planning to trade or buy out Rondo, whom they signed this summer to a 2-year, $27 million deal. The veteran guard endured a tension-filled stint with the Sacramento Kings last season and had a public falling out with coach Rick Carlisle on the Dallas Mavericks the year before. This time around, he vowed to stay professional. Despite benching Rondo and telling him he's looked slow in recent contests, Hoiberg reportedly doesn't have a problem with the four-time All-Star and may insert him into the second unit if the former NBA champion is still out of the rotation ahead of February's trade deadline, though the Bulls are expected to attempt to move him. So, basically what's going on here, and this is a continuation from the Hoiberg stuff, because the Bulls are struggling, Coach Hoiberg's like, you know what, let me change things up. If the congestion is such a problem with Wade, Rondo, and Butler together, let me take one of them out of the equation. And the odd man out was Rondo because he wasn't performing as well. He's not being the player who he once was on both ends. And that's a problem. All his numbers are down, and it's a problem. So Coach Hoiberg's like, you know what? Let me change things up. Let me take Rondo out and see what happens. And the Bulls performed a lot better because they were able to, spread the floor a little bit, relieve sort of a little bit of that congestion. And they played a little bit better. So now, and so basically in the Indiana game, which was Friday, Rondo was taken out for the full second half. And then in the Saturday in the Milwaukee game, he was benched the entire game. So now Rondo's at this point like, yo, if I'm not getting a chance to play, then why am I here? I don't want to complain or anything, but if I don't play, then what's the point of me being here? I'd rather be traded to a place where I will be able to play. So that's really the whole situation right now with Rondo. And he stated that if he doesn't get to play, he wants out. He wants to go get traded somewhere else because he feels that he wants to play. But personally, I think that the Bulls roster is a bad fit for Rondo. I think Rondo has always been a bad fit ever since he signed with the Bulls this offseason, that he was just a bad fit for this roster. And his numbers show it. His scoring numbers are down. His assists are down, which is surprising. His steals are down. He's overall just isn't the same player we've seen, that can be a really good quality player. So, and because of that, the Bulls perform worse offensively when he's on the floor. So, therefore, I think the Bulls management should just trade Rondo. I think that the team is suffering because of Rondo, and if you want to fix some of it, the best option is to trade him and sort of to get a player who can fit this roster better. And personally, I think what the Bulls actually need is a point guard who can shoot threes. A point guard who, can spread the floor a little bit and sort of give Butler and Wade options to pass out to, For, like I mentioned with the Hoiberg stuff, the Bulls need floor spacers, but primarily at the point guard spot and at the power forward spot. Because when Wade and Butler have the ball, they want to be able to kick out because they're obviously going to attract attention inside. So they want to be able to kick out to people in order to have some nice open shots. So the Bulls need some floor spacers to allow that to happen. So, some names that can come to mind if the Bulls were to trade Rondo with Brandon Jennings of the New York Knicks. I think he will be a great starting point guard for the Bulls because he's a great offensive player and he'll bring a lot of energy. But there's also Brandon Knight, who, again, in Phoenix isn't being utilized and could be useful in Chicago. But overall, I just think Rondo should ask for his trade, and I think Bulls management should just grant it for him. Because personally, both parties aren't working out together. Rondo isn't playing, and he wants to play. The Bulls management don't want to play him because he's not doing well for them. So it's a mutual agreement that, you know what, maybe we should go our separate ways. Maybe that'll be best for both of us. And I think that's what it is. Because overall, I just feel that Rondo doesn't fit this roster. And I just feel that the best thing for both parties is for just to go their separate ways. I think that is the best possible thing for both to do, because it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Why keep Rondo on the roster and not play him? It's a waste of and you're paying this guy $14 million. So why would you pay him that much money and, not play him? So the best thing is to trade him, get somebody who will fit your roster and who you will play, and, hopefully you'll achieve some success, But that's the entire Rondo situation. We'll see in the coming weeks what's going to come by it and if Rondo will be traded or not. So now we're moving on to the continuation from last week's episode, where George Karl surprised by his book backlash and apologizes to Kenyon Martin. This will get interesting. George Karl did a lot of talking for his new book, Furious George, and it's generating more chatter than he expected. Oh, really now? It's generating more chatter than you really expected. So when you call out players, you criticize the league, you criticize a franchise, you think people are going to stay quiet about that? Just saying. The former NBA coach said Thursday on ESPN's radio Mike and Mike that he was surprised by the negative response, particularly regarding his comments about Carmelo Anthony, Kenyon Martin, and J.R. Smith. Oh, no shit. Yeah, Karl said. There's no question. Surprise. I guess there's no answer. There's no question. We all want to be liked a little bit, but the backlash is interesting. And a couple of things I learned from, I think the big thing is, I probably should have studied. I didn't know. I probably should have studied what I was writing a little bit more than I did. Martin criticized Karl for excerpts from the book that referred to him growing up without a father, though Karl said in the ESPN appearance that he wanted to honor superstar single mothers who raised NBA players, and the excerpts didn't come out exactly as he said them. Okay. If you listen to last week's episode, that excerpt had nothing to do with mothers. It was literally a straight up shot at both Melo and Kenyon Martin. It was something like, oh, all this money and not a father to show them how to use it properly. I mean, I don't know about you, but that isn't anything complimenting a mother. That is just a straight up shot at the fact that they don't have fathers and they're immature and they don't know how to use money right. Yeah, and I said it poorly, and I'm sorry that I said it poorly, and I'm sorry for the reaction Karl said, because I know Kenyon. The one thing I love about Kenyon Martin, he is a good father. Okay, so personally, I find everything that George Karl just said right now, absolutely ridiculous. Because if you wrote this book with the intention of people to read it, and if people are going to read it, people are going to start talking about it. And so if people are reading this and you're writing this book with that intention in mind, why the hell would you write all this stuff if you said, oh, it didn't come out right? You're writing this book. You should have thought twice every time you started typing or writing or whatever the hell you do. I don't know what George Karl does. But you should have thought twice about what you're writing, what you're saying, and how that will be impacting who you're talking about. Because remember, even if you're not working for the NBA anymore, you have a connection to the NBA, which means you have a huge connection to the media. The NBA is a huge media platform. There's media surrounding almost everything the NBA does. So if you have any relationship to the NBA, you're gonna get press. You're gonna get media covering that. And the fact that Carl knew this when he was writing the book, because obviously if he didn't know this, then he's a complete idiot. He knew this going in, that players are going to react to this. Teams are going to react to this. The league is going to react to this. Why would you write it? Why would you write what you wrote knowing that this was going to happen? It's ridiculous in my opinion. It's kind of stupid. It's like, what the hell? It's like you knew something was going to happen, but you did it anyways. And now you're here on Mike and Mike saying that, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't know what I was writing. Seriously? After saying all this, you're denying what you're saying. You're apologizing as if it will do anything. And you're acting like, oh, it wasn't my fault. Where, in fact, it was your fault. You wrote the goddamn book. You openly criticized players. And, yeah. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. I don't even want to spend a lot of time on this. But I'm just going to end this with this. I said it in the last podcast, and I'm going to say it again. If George Karl doesn't want to end up like the Donald Sterling 2.0, he should shut up and burn his book, as he has nothing that can save him from what will come out of that book. Nothing can save him from that. Where you're openly criticizing players, you're criticizing the league, you're criticizing a franchise, you better burn that book to shreds and make sure nobody remembers anything that's in that book, because it will ultimately come back and hurt you, George Karl. Nobody else. And that's all I'm going to say about this. But overall, I find this ridiculous, and I just can't stand George Karl right now, because it's honestly a shame to see a coach, a former coach, do that and, try to gain sympathy from doing something wrong. But that's just in my opinion. So we're going to move on now. So Timberwolves will seek medical retirement for Pekovic after January 31st. The Minnesota Timberwolves may be moving on from Nikola Pekovic. The big man missed the majority of last season, and he was ruled out for 2016-17, as well due to an Achilles injury and complications resulting from surgery. He admitted earlier this week he cannot run without pain, so his days in the NBA may be numbered. The T-Wolves are expected to seek medical retirement for the 30-year-old center, according to Mike Stein of ESPN. Since Peck suited up in 12 games last season, they must wait until January 31st, 2017, a full year since he last appeared in a game before applying for the salary exclusion. If granted the exemption due to Pekovic's career-ending injury, the remaining salary on his contract, $12.1 million this season and $11.6 million in 2017-18, will be removed from Minnesota's cap. Over 6 injury-riddled seasons in Minnie, the Montenegro native averaged 12.6 points and 6.7 rebounds, but never played more than 65 contests in a campaign. Okay, so personally, I think this is the right move for the Timberwolves. I think this is the best thing the Timberwolves can do right now, because this guy has not played in more than 65 games in a season within the last 6 years. That's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. And he hasn't played more than 65 games. That's a sign saying that, you know what, you got to move on from this guy. You got to get rid of this guy, because he's getting injured so much. It's not benefiting you. All that he's doing is taking your money and wasting your time. And if you think about it, $12 million this season and $11 million next season, that's a lot of money that the Timberwolves can use to sign free agents. It's a lot of money that they have frozen up for a guy who's always injured. And the best thing for the Timberwolves to do is to move on and to part ways with Pekovic. Because honestly, Pekovic has been just getting injured after injured after injured, and it's time for the Wolves to say, you know what, enough's enough. We need you gone, bro. We need to take the money that you're not using and invest it in new players and free agents that can help benefit the team. Because right now Pekovic isn't benefiting the Wolves; he's actually hurting the Wolves. So I think this is the best thing for the Timberwolves. I think it's the best decision for both Pekovic and the Timberwolves to part ways, as both, it benefits the Timberwolves because the Timberwolves are going to be gaining some cap relief. And Pekovic, well, if he's injured that much, the best thing for him to do is retire and to move on a little bit from Minnesota and try to, get himself healthy and then return back to the NBA. I think that's the best thing. But overall, I think this is the right move for the Timberwolves. They need to do this. They need to move their franchise forward, and they need to move on from Pekovic. Because right now, Pekovic is not helping them, and he's actually hurting them in the process. So I think this is the best move for the Timberwolves to make. So Brandon Knight likely to be traded by the deadline. So it's been an up and down marriage between the Phoenix Suns and Brandon Knight since the trade that brought the former Milwaukee Buck out west. After playing 9 minutes Thursday in a win over the Raptors, all signs are pointing to a likely trade involving the 6-year pro, who could be one of the bigger names moved between now and the February 23rd trade deadline, according to ESPN's Mark Stein. This comes as no surprise because of Knight's ever-diminishing role on the young Sun squad. He hasn't surpassed the 30-minute mark in a game since November 30th, and is only averaging 23.5 minutes this season, a far cry from the 36 minutes he averaged last year. With second-year phenom Devin Booker hitting threes on the wing and Eric Bledsoe leading the charge at both ends, the Suns' backcourt is pretty much set for the future. Knight, a year after signing a 5-year, $70 million deal, seems to be the one on the outside looking in. The Kings have made it abundantly clear they're looking to add a scoring guard to take some pressure out of DeMarcus Cousins, and they've been pursuing a trade for Knight since the summer, according to ESPN's Brian Windhorst. In 33 games this season, the 25-year-old is averaging 13 points per game on 40% shooting with 2.7 assists and 2.7 rebounds over the 23.5 minutes for the 10-23 Suns. Okay, so clearly the problem with Knight is that Phoenix is not utilizing him. The Suns aren't utilizing Brandon Knight. He's not getting any minutes to showcase himself and to, help this team. He's not given the opportunity to do anything. The prime example was against the Raptors, where in a game where they could have used his skills, they could have used this guy's talent, they only played him 9 minutes. 9 minutes is not enough. It doesn't make any sense for a player who's that good off your bench, who was supposed to be sort of your sixth man. You only play this guy 9 minutes. It's kind of ridiculous right here. It's like, you have a great player, but you're not playing him. It doesn't make any sense. But so therefore, I think the best thing for the Suns to do is to trade Brandon Knight. Like a lot of the trade rumors I said, if you're not utilizing this guy, to his potential, why are you keeping him on your roster? Why don't you just trade him, get someone who can benefit your roster, and help another team out in the process? And the best fit is the Sacramento Kings. Sacramento has been pursuing a trade for Knight since the summer. Why? Because they know he's a quality player. He's a young player. He's a player that can help their franchise. And the Suns could potentially get back some quality players. They can get back maybe an Aaron Aflalo. They can get a Costa Koufos. They could probably get anybody from the Kings roster because the Kings have some talent. If they can pull this off, Phoenix might be able to get Rudy Gay. Rudy Gay may be available in trade talks. So, I don't know. It's in my opinion, personally, I think Brandon Knight should be traded. There's no point keeping a player who you're not using. If you're not using this guy, why are you keeping him? Why don't you let this guy go to a place where he can be better, and that's it. I mean, I think that's the right move. I think the right move is to to part ways with Brandon Knight. I think that's the best thing. Because the Suns personally have way too many point guards. They have so many guards on their roster that they need to let go of some of them in order to make the team better. And, sort of get better on the front court where they need a lot of help in. They don't have anybody on their front court. So the best thing for Phoenix to do is sort of trade. And another option for Brandon Knight may be the Sixers. Philadelphia is always looking for a point guard. You can go out there and get Nerlens Noel, who is still available right now. So there's another option right there. So Phoenix has trade options. So why not trade this guy? Get somebody who can help your roster and get rid of the guy who's not helping and you're not using him. Because if you're using him, it's a completely different scenario. But if you're not using this guy, where he's a quality player, he has some trade value, trade him, salvage that value, make your team better. Why waste time? It's now or never. With trading, it's now or never. Because if you let an opportunity slip by, that window of opportunity may never open again. So why are you risking it? Why don't you just go for it and just trade this guy and let this guy be free and let this guy be successful and in order to make your roster better? That's just the way I'm thinking right now. But overall, I just feel Brandon Knight should be traded, and you know the whole spiel, because it doesn't make any sense keeping a player who you're not using. And oh my God. Oh my. Pelicans finalizing a 1-year deal with Montezumas. Hey, what do you know? It's a good old friend Montezumas. Back on the podcast. He loves making my headlines, man. The New Orleans Pelicans, an unrestricted free agent Donatas Montezumas, are reportedly finalizing a 1-year deal worth the veteran's minimum. Sources told ESPN's Mark Stein. New Orleans waived wing player Reggie Williams to create a roster spot. Montezumas' representatives reportedly met with the Pelicans management on Sunday, and talks between the two parties were extremely positive, according to the Vertical's Sham. I'm not even going to read that name. The 26-year-old became a restricted free agent over the offseason and didn't land a new contract until the Brooklyn Nets signed him to an offer sheet in December. The Houston Rockets inevitably matched, renegotiating his deal and finally locking him down to a 4-year, $35 million contract. Houston renounced its rights to Montezumas shortly after, thus making him an unrestricted free agent to go where he chooses. The market originally appeared quite sparse for someone with his chronicled injury history. Montezumas was sent packing to the Detroit Pistons prior to last season's trade deadline, only for the deal to be annulled due to him failing a physical stemming from a herniated disc that required surgery. In just 37 games during his final season in the Lone Star State, Montezumas averaged 6.2 points on 44% shooting, 2.9 rebounds and 1.1 assists in 14.8 minutes. The year prior, the 7-foot Lithuanian chipped in career highs across the board with 12 points per game, 5.9 rebounds, and 1.8 assists, while converting 50.4% of his field goal attempts. The Pelicans currently sit 11th in the Western Conference at 14-21, yet are only one game back of the Sacramento Kings and the Denver Nuggets for the 8th and final playoff spot. So first of all, I find this completely hilarious where this whole story, is right now. Started off with Montezumas didn't want Houston's original offer. Brooklyn gave him an offer. Houston matched. Then physical. And Houston pulled the offer. And Houston's like, you know what? Screw you. Get the hell out. Go sign somewhere else. And now Montezumas went from potentially earning $35 million to now earning the veterans minimum. It's hilarious on how stupid he was with managing his money. That's the only thing I can say about this. How stupid Montezumas was managing his money. He didn't think, where would I rather be, on a contending team with $7 million that I'll be content with, or earning the veterans minimum? Because if I were you, right now that $7 million from Houston looks really good. But overall, the only thing I can say to Montezumas is congrats on, signing with the Pelicans, and I just hope you, I don't know, just good luck in NOLA. But overall, he really screwed up with his contract situation. But what can we do? I mean, Montiunas screwed up, but I guess he can be used as an example for other players and what not to do when you're in a restricted free agency. That's all I can say about that. And finally, the final story for today is Rockets targeting Kosta Koufos in a potential trade. Clint Capella has been solid for the Houston Rockets this season, averaging 11.8 points, 8 rebounds, and 1.6 blocks per game. But he recently went down with a fibula fracture in his left leg, which has caused the Rockets to be shorthanded in the front court. The team has been searching for depth at the center position since Capella's injury, as he's expected to be sidelined for at least another 2 weeks, according to ESPN's Mark Stein. Sacramento Kings big man Kosta Koufos has emerged as a prime trade target for the Rockets. Koufos has started in 28 of the Kings' 32 games this season, averaging 5.9 points and 5.8 boards per contest, with Willie Cauley-Stein and Anthony Tolliver backing him up. Koufos is a player the Kings could afford to move, especially if they can get some value in return. Zach Lowe reports that Houston has been dangling Corey Brewer in trade talks, who could provide Sacramento with another wing player in case it loses out on Rudy Gay at some point, but he also noted that Brewer's name hasn't drawn much traction. Before Capella's injury, the Rockets were on a 10-game winning streak. He's become the perfect complement to James Harden, and some even believe he's a better fit in Houston than Dwight Howard was. His energy and ability to finish at the rim has been a valued addition to the Rockets' starting five. Nene is filling in nicely, but the Rockets could use some help off the bench until Capella makes his return. Montrezl Harrell has seen an increase in his minutes since the injury, putting up 12.6 points and 4.2 rebounds in the Rockets' past 5 games, but adding a player like Koufos could give Houston a much-needed depth at the front in the short term. So personally, first of all, if you guys don't know, Capella went down with an injury, and Houston's been playing amazing with him on the floor. He's been playing fantastic. He's been fitting exactly what Houston needs in a big man. Just a guy who can get rebounds and just be a guy who James Harden can pass to and throw up lobs to. That's it. But personally, I think the Rockets shouldn't rush into replacing Capella, because the Rockets are doing relatively well right now. They're doing well. They're enjoying some success. But I think they shouldn't try to ruin that or try to jeopardize that in any way. I think they should slow down a little bit, because when you're trading for players while you're successful, there's a potential risk of disrupting the chemistry that you've created. Now, sometimes this occurs, but sometimes it does not occur. But most of the time, it happens where you get a player who you think will solve your problem, but then all it does is create chemistry issues, and it will just, hurt you in the end. So that's where I'm sort of at right now. I think Houston shouldn't rush into it, because right now, even without Capella, they're still doing well. They're still winning games. James Harden is still carrying the team. So I think if it's only 2 weeks till Capella returns, I think there's no need to trade for Koufos. I think the best thing for Houston to do is just wait it out, wait for Capella to return, or look for a better option, because I don't think Koufos is the best option for Houston right now, because they need a guy who can sort of fill Capella's role. Maybe a Nerlens Noel could be a good option, but I don't know. I personally think Houston should just remain how they are. They're winning games. They're being consistent. They should just keep rolling what they got. If they're being successful, don't ruin it. That's all I'm trying to say here. So, yeah, I just think it's a bad idea right now, in my opinion, to trade for Kosta Koufos. That's just my opinion. But there you guys have it. That was the podcast for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave the episode a like if you enjoyed it. Also, in the comment section down below, let me know how the audio quality was in this episode. I recently just upgraded my equipment, so hopefully the audio should sound better. I'm still tinkering around with it, but we'll see how it is. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Subscribe to this channel on YouTube if you want to see the video version of the podcast, or go on to podbean.com and subscribe to the podcast there for the audio version, which will be in the link in the description down below. And yeah, follow me on social media. My Twitter and Facebook are up here. I'm primarily active on my Twitter, but you can also follow me on Facebook as well. And yeah, as always, guys, I'm Hani from NBA Talk, and I'll see you all in the next episode of the NBA Talk podcast. Thank you so much for watching.